Today we're doing some work on the battleship over here in my continued quest to try to make a Japanese Rolls-Royce out of this thing. In my experience, cars with such a long wheelbase, with independent suspension, with gigantic tires, it should be able to ride as well as anything. But they say, oh, it's a truck-based platform, therefore it has to ride harshly. I don't think so. I think it's mostly just being overdamped, oversprung for the job. It makes sense for a truck, but for an SUV, I don't have that kind of industrial payload requirement. So going down on spring rate, putting in some remote dual adjustable shocks, or at least a single, but also as I'm lowering it, I think it needs some extra camber. So one of the things I'm putting in is these Camburg control arms, and I've tried the King shocks that I installed. They come with 600-pound springs. I installed 500s. They're much better. However, the problem is that it still ends up sitting a bit high in the front. Normally I would choose a shorter spring, but I thought of trying something even softer, so I'm also going to try 400 pound per inch spring rate, so we'll see how it goes. Alright, the wheel is off. Now I think I'm going to start with removing the upper control arm, since it's something I have to do anyway, and it's going to give me a little bit extra clearance to get at the spring. Basically what I find I ended up having to do was, in order to get the spring off, I have to remove the coilover, and the only way I have clearance to do that is to undo the top and compress the spring enough so that I can pop this collar off. It basically, there's a notch, so you can just lift it up, twist it, and then you can slide out of the way. I think you can sort of see the slot through the bottom there. It's wide enough to clear the shaft, so you just need to lift it far enough up so that it can slide out. And then obviously I need to remove the bottom bolt, and because of the gas preload on these, the extended shock length is actually more than the travel of the lower control arm. I learned that the hard way by popping out the inner CV joint by accident when I first installed these. So that's going to require a little bit of muscle to compress this thing by hand while I try to get it out of the bottom socket there. The upper control arm looks pretty straightforward. I'm not going to go through any details on it because I'm sure you can find good DIYs online, which I would probably end up following anyway. So let's pick this up when this is off and we start installing the Camburg. So far so good. Got the old arm out. Started with this side because I think this is the one with the least access, because instead of the bolt being able to go into clear space, there's a bunch of hoses and belts and wiring and stuff in there, so there's kind of only one spot for it to push into, and I'm just gonna leave it on there, and then when I put the arm back in, I'm just gonna start with that end. So next I gotta sneak my Super Chen compressor in here. That seems to get the job done, but I definitely wear the safety glasses so that at least part of my head will be intact if it ever comes apart. So I've got to compress the spring, get the bottom bolt the rest of the way out, and remove this cup, swap the spring, and as they say, it's the proverbial installation is the reverse of the removal, which of course it's not going to be, but let's stay positive. Got the compressor on there. This is what I was talking about. So it lets you compress a spring from just one side, keeps nice even pressure on it. So now there's enough room to lift the spring out of the way, and then the cup can come off through the slot. And just need to undo the bottom bolt. I'll have to undo the top nut so I can tilt the whole assembly out of the way far enough to slip the old spring off and new spring on. And we should be ready to put it back together and move on to the controller. All right, the 400-pound spring is in. I actually managed to get it in without undoing the top. This time with the control arm out, I was able to tilt it out of the way and finagle enough room so that I could get the spring down without needing to move the strut down and tilt it. So I'm in the process of installing the Camburg arm now, and quick tip if you're going to be doing this, get the Heim spacers aligned before putting them in. You know, they're really good quality, so they're quite stiff out of the box, and it was kind of racking my brain a little bit for a few minutes there, thinking that maybe I screwed something up but in terms of the length. But then, you know, with Heim joints, the whole point is that, you know, they have a lot of misalignment that they can accommodate for. And you know, I tried wiggling it, but it's so stiff and the tolerance is so tight that realistically it's really tough to get it right with the bolt trying to go through already. So get it out of the car, get the spacers in, get it lined up, and then we can pop it in. And that's it. This side's all done. Once the Heim joints were lined up, the bolt went in pretty easy. Getting it to mate up with the spindle is pretty straightforward. Once you do a little bit of a chamfer on the top hole, like they say in the instructions, just need to wiggle things back and forth a little bit. The uniball is also super tight, so that was probably the hardest part of the whole thing as far as installing the control arms is concerned. I'm just going to go ahead and knock out the other side real quick because it's going to be the same thing. Probably not going to film anything because kind of gotta get this car done for Monday morning. Feels a little bit like working on a project car back in school, where I'm gonna race against the clock, where the thing that I have to take to work needs to be ready in the morning. I guess the difference is I now have other cars. Well, more that one, less so that one. More on those in the future. All right, be right back, and we'll see how it looks on the ground. Oh, and also for anybody else wondering, this is something that I was curious about, because one of the reasons why I wanted to get these was to do some camber correction, because on the Sequoia in general, because of the independent rear, there's quite a bit of negative camber in the rear, but the front, you know, basically has either a zero, or in my case, when it was lifted by the stiffer springs a little bit, it was even positive. So I wanted to get a little bit of negative camber. These are designed to correct a lifted car, but in my case I actually wanted to add negative camber at stock ride height. So here you can see the difference in the displacement from the pivot point to the where the ball joint, or the monoball as it were in the Camburg would be. Should add some significant negative camber, so looking forward to seeing it. Well, I lied. Taking a quick break to document some extra stuff on this side. First of all, these pipes are in the way of getting a wrench or a socket onto the nut, but there's just enough room to push them just a tiny bit over, and then you can slip the socket, a shallow socket, not a deep socket, onto the nut, and then an extension that runs past them, and then you can get a breaker bar on this side. It was otherwise pretty easy. There's a clip at the top here where you can slide the wiring harness off out of the way. This is what made me stop, because my day almost got really fun, because somebody looks like to have tried replacing the control arms on this car before, and got as far as rounding off this bolt and said, well, fuck that. Thanks, bro. Alright, driver's side done. Let's get her on the ground, see what she looks like. Definitely looks shiny inside. Well, she's back on the ground, the tools are put away. It's looking quite promising. It's not even fully unloaded yet. Carolina squat seems to be gone. Got a little bit of negative camber, so let's take it out and see how it drives. Well, so far so good. Gonna try this on-ramp onto the highway. Someday somebody will have to explain to me how a state with no inclement weather and the budget of a medium-sized country can have roads this bad. Oh, nice. doesn't seem to self-center as well as before. Not sure if the toe is out or it's the effect of the camber. But the ride is terrific. So overall I'd call it a win. The stance is looking very good. It's exactly what I was after. The ride is terrific. The front is not floaty, but it's much more compliant now. There is one problem though. So the camber gain is very reasonable, kind of what I was hoping for. It's more or less matching front to back now. But with the added camber, is this steering wheel? Yeah. Got some major toe out going on, and she drives like it. Doesn't quite recenter very well, and it's pretty darty at speed and in cornering, so needs an alignment. Got the race car tools out. Yeah, that's fucked up. A little ASMR for my Rust Belt buddies back on the East Coast, or a lesson in how not to be cocky. Let's see which one it is. "15-year-old tie rods." Not sure if you can see that, but exactly 2/16. Should be pretty much to spec. Busted out the camber gauge just to see. This is where we ended up. Ooh, some BMW spec over here. Might ask the alignment shop to take that in a bit. I don't know if I want to mess with the eccentric bolts, but we'll see. See how it drives. I do like negative camber. I think that did it. It's now handling the way I expected it to, with added negative camber, lowered front, better center of gravity. The lower control arms are not parallel to the ground, which is awesome. And the added caster that the Camburg arms provide actually increases directional stability now, the way I would expect compared to before. And I somehow managed to keep the steering wheel straight. Amazing. Watch these bumps. California roads, everybody. But she handles them like a champ. There's this turn coming up, which I took yesterday. I didn't get it on video, but I've never experienced toe out so bad where you actually lose front end grip. Like I've had a car that was towed out too much on the racetrack where, you know, it was really eager to change direction at the front, but it was, you know, still good grip. Now, yesterday, you know, normally you brake, you get the feel for what you have, and wow, yeah, that's good. Normally you brake, you get the feel for what you have, and then you're like, okay, so this is about how much grip I have in the corner. And I turn in and it's like, nope. I had to actually straighten it out a bit to brake, because I guess I was doing most of the turning with my right inside, and the left was still trying to go straight. That was pretty amazing. But now it's handling the way I would expect. Yeah, buddy. Tighten it up, get on the power, and away we go. Yeah. I think we'll call this a win.